Eight, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good evening, or good day, or good morning. Hello to everyone listening. Welcome, Chris. Welcome to the Andy and Chris show, or the Chris and Andy show. However you.
Thanks, Andy. Hello, everybody.
So, for those that don't know, Chris does Scottish Paranormal Podcast, which is obviously a podcast. So, he interviews people same way I do, and if you've not met him before, then you need to sort your life out. Basically. Sorry, we're late. We had a few things that we needed to sort out beforehand, but it'll work itself out, won't it?
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
My internet just went down at the last minute.
Yeah.
Typical John Keel fashion.
Yeah. It makes a change from mine doing it. It's almost every single week, pretty much. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please do put your questions in. For those that haven't already read it, I suggest you do. So it's the Mothman Prophecies by John E Keel. I spent the last 2 days listening to it on Audible, 9.5 hours. So if I don't know anything about it now, there's definitely something wrong with me.
It's a meaty book. Plenty in it.
There's loads in it. There's a lot. Just quickly, there's a lot of references to the UK as well. What I didn't realise, because it wasn't that long ago that I read it, but there's a lot in there that I completely forgot about. Mm-hmm. Did you find the same?
Yeah, I read it. I'm going to go back. I read it probably about 4 years ago, which is quite late, and probably reading the Mothman Prophecies. You know what I mean? I'm roughly around about that time. I watched the film back in the day, as everybody else did. And I never read the book. I never used to read a lot of Keel stuff until kind of more recently. I'd say probably maybe even about 5-6 years ago, started reading some of Keel stuff. But when I read The Mothman, I left that book out because I'd seen the film and I kind of thought, seen the film, bought the T-shirt kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like, how much was I wrong? I mean, when I actually read the book, I mean, films like about a tiny snippet, sections in the book, as you'll get to kind of find out. If you've not read the book, get the book. Really, really good. I mean, if you understand the whole kind of Keel thing as well, I mean, that's why I've got the flannel shirt on tonight as well. Put the kind of tartan kind of flannel shirt on, the flannel man, because that's kind of where a lot of kind of things where it started with Keel as well, where people were seen in people's rooms at night wearing the flannel shirt, standing over people's beds and things like that.
Yeah,
it kind of started when a Keel kind of era.
Yeah, it's a check shirt, wasn't it? Like the lumberjack shirt.
Yeah.
So
that's why I'm donning it tonight.
I've not got one, so I couldn't have done it anyway.
I bought this one especially. I think I seen it in TK Maxx or something, so I was like, I'll have
that. Yeah. I can put a plain blue one on. Will that out? No.
Needs to be red.
Yeah. But we was just saying just before we come on, knowing what I now know from like interviewing people like yourself and Steve Mera, Albert Rosales, George Mitrovic, Heidi Hollis, and everyone else, going back to reading the book or listening to the book, as the case may be, it changes, or it has done with me, it's completely changed my outlook of what everything is, because he does refer to a lot of these lights that are seen and a lot of UFOs, because he's not really that much about Point Pleasant. Keeps jumping back to like West Virginia, but then he's like over in Ohio and New York, the UK, Florida, California, and just with what he was saying about the lights and the UFOs and everything else. And once all this started, once someone got some sort of communication with the UFOs or these odd-looking men in black type 4 or 5 foot tall creatures, but the men in black, he kept saying, he referred to them, a lot of the witnesses did, there was always around 5'9", never really any taller than that. So it's just like average height. But once they got that connection, some people started with like poltergeist activity. So they'd wake up and they'd hear the kitchen door open or pans and pots clattering downstairs.
Well, Keel was, I mean, going through the book, and apart from even the book as well, you could pick up any John Keel's book today.
Yeah.
And it's no like reading old reports and stuff like that. It's everything that happened then is still happening now. And everything that happened then, even with the government and stuff, is still going through the same processes, right? But the way Keel took it back then as well as obviously the mixture, the melting pot of phenomena together. And he kind of denounced the fact back in 1967 that it wasn't ETs. He basically said because of his investigations, probably in that era between 66 67, that he chucked the ET hypothesis out the window because of the fact that it was mixed with men in black, it was mixed with apparitions, it was mixed with cryptids, it was mixed with UFOs, it was mixed with poltergeist activity, like you said, and it's apparitions and strange people and everything mixed together. And it was almost like some type of, and what he kind of did say is it'll sometimes formulate into what you believe. And the same as well, like what do you call it? A few other ufologists at the time had the same kind of ideas as that.
It was like, it weren't a set group, but everyone that was doing it, everyone had heard of everyone, and they was all able to contact each other. But what I found was, well, one of the strangest bits of it, obviously because it was back in the 60s and like early 70s, when they were sending stuff to each other, obviously there's having to do it through the post.
Yeah.
Stuff that was being sent, like documents and that, by the time, so say they were sending it, say there's one, it's going from West Virginia to Florida, and I think they got it next day or something, or a couple of days later, and they open the letter, and it's like all these documents had changed or been ripped up. But when they sent it back, it was in the original envelope, and it's just weird stuff like that. So someone's been able to get into the package or the envelope, change it, reseal it, and then send it back.
Yeah, there's loads of stuff like that. I mean, so the kind of story starts in 66, the winter of 66. And so John Keel's, if you don't know who John Keel is, I mean, I'll take it quite a lot in the chat will probably know who John Keel is, or you will know who John Keel is. I mean, but if you don't, reporter, writer, author, he was into kind of Forteana, so he started investigating UFOs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
really good at collecting data. He had hundreds of data. When he asks some of the interviewee, like basically the witnesses, the questions and stuff like that, it's the type of stuff that they'd be asking today, and like the strange kind of question they'd be asking them. Not, I mean, things like if they had a UFO sighting, it's things that you maybe ask that maybe no back in the day they maybe see them as abductees, but it's things that maybe an investigator these days would ask somebody who'd seen a sighting that would maybe expect them to be, if it was maybe a question to be abductees. So, for example, things like if they had seen a sighting, did they have follow up with things like strange phone calls? Did they have strange visitors at the door? Did they have poltergeist activity? Did they have things like that? And I mean, he would ask all these questions, not just like bog standard taking. This is back in the 60s. So you think an investigator of that type would be asking these type of questions, but because he'd seen that much and investigated that much, he could see comparisons between different sightings and what to ask. So he'd ask all these questions. So it kind of started with the book starts with him, and then a bit. If you've seen the film of the film of the Mothman Prophecies, it relates to Richard Gere. Obviously, he's coming back from New York or something like that, and he's must be like sleep driving, or he's just like he's in a trance and drives to like Point Pleasant, and he chaps like the person's door and stuff. So that kind of happened to a certain degree, and it starts off where the devil arrives in town, right? And John Keel, it was John Keel chapping somebody's door, but he was actually at a conference. It was at a kind of either a kind of UFO event conference or something like that. And in his way back, his car, I think his car broke down or something like that.
Yeah, it breaks down.
There was what happened is there was UFO sightings, and he was investigating them. Then there was some type of kind of conference or meeting about it, and all the power, or no, it wasn't the power. The actual phone lines had all went dead in a certain area.
Yeah.
So I think his car broke down, so he had to kind of travel. He was walking house to house at night, chapping doors, trying to get phone somebody.
Yeah.
And then a strange guy in a suit turning up in the back hills or whatever, someplace. Remember, like this place, Point Pleasant at the time, only had 6,000 people that stayed there.
Yeah.
So like in that place, you're maybe talking out in the back country, chapping somebody's door with a suit on in that kind of time, beard, whatever. So, and then one of the persons that had kind of chapped the door, like I think the day or two later, they died on the Silver Bridge accident, which we'll get to at the end of the book.
Yeah.
And so they kind of relayed the story that this was a devil that turned up at somebody's door. I mean, so it just shows you how kind of folklore can kind of enter and start. And it was actually him, but he just said it was just by chance that all the power lines were down or whatever, or the phone network was out. So I chapped this person's door, and then like a few days or a week later, they were dead. And then you'll see, he said, you'll see that story through folklore. Just kind of a wee bit to start to see how things kind of generate like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But he explains that though, doesn't he? He's saying like when he's knocking on the doors asking to use the phone, and one of the houses he's go to, the woman comes to the door. She gets a bit scared and nervous as she goes off and gets her husband.
Yeah.
And he just opens the door. He said, "No, sorry, not that one," and shuts the door on him. Quite literally. And
off.
yeah, pretty much. So, like you said, and then everything starts happening. So it does look dodgy, but he said that's how a lot of these folklores start, with just little things like that. Everyone puts all the pieces together, but comes up with the wrong answer.
Yeah, totally. I was kind of, we've gone through the book, And I was kind of astounded and stupidly for actually taking like the film and thinking, oh, the film's probably a good representation of the book, and it was nothing like it.
No.
You know what I mean? For the amount of actually activity and flap that happened over that space of time within that area was crazy.
Yeah.
And to understand, again, we'll go through some of the stuff, know what I mean? But it kind of, the book kind of starts, and then it obviously starts at kind of the end a wee bit when he's there.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to a bit about Mary Hire. So Mary Hire worked for the local kind of newspaper type thing.
Yeah.
And she'd always be putting kind of messages out in the wire or stories or whatever else. And it was actually kind of started 2 weeks after the bridge incident. The bridge had collapsed and stuff, or a week and a bit after. And people were still entering, quite a lot of people were coming in and out through the newspaper for information or stories or whatever else. And she started getting some strange visitors. So one was a guy called Jack Brown, was asking questions, saying he was a ufologist, asking questions about UFOs in the area. So he was kind of coming in and asking about more sightings that was going on. And then quite a strange character, we'll get to him in a wee bit as well, but there was other two guys came in who were tan complexion. They always had kind of olive tan complexion, who'd asked about the UFOs as well, on the same day or the day after. And they'd said, what would you say if somebody asked you not to talk about the UFOs or write about the UFOs?
Yeah.
And her reply was, I tell them to get to hell. And the guy, Jack Brown, asked the same. So that's kind of where it started and stuff like that. But then it kind of went on to, I'm talking about like things in the past. So like, even we talk about this thing in this day and age, like UFOs are seen around things like burial mounds, are seen around, like in America, maybe like Indian burial mounds here. We've got kind of burial mounds here. They're still seen in things like that. I mean, the place where I am, there's like stuff seen up there now and again throughout the years. Stuff in, as I'm saying, you're talking down North East Yorkshire, burial mounds down there. You get sightings of things all over the country. You get that, you know what I mean? So he's kind of relating it to things like that, and he's talking about like tulpas and stuff like that. He said, are these things created by generations of actually creating this kind of phenomena? I mean, through kind of thought forms and all that kind of stuff. We're just kind of hypothetically thinking at the start and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But even then, he's talking about ufologists back in the day, and they're talking about nuts and bolts sightings, and they're talking about lights in the skies, but they'll choose to cut out the bits of the story that doesn't fit their kind of circle or square. So like, they maybe no talk about the contactee side of things. Like nowadays it's probably called the abductee type of thing. I mean, but they would shut that bit off because they just thought it was it didn't fit with the ET hypothesis, or it didn't fit with this or that. So they would choose to kind of cut bits out. And that did happen for a while, ufology up here. I think in the last wee while it was kind of came together a bit better, but you'd get ufologists who would constantly just talk about nuts and bolts and would ignore absolutely everything else. They would ignore every other single bit of paranormal activity apart from a nuts and bolts scene craft, which you just find ludicrous. You know what I mean? Considering for years and years this is all linked in together.
Yeah, but do you not think though in the movie it concentrates more on Point Pleasant and West Virginia, and it doesn't span out from there? I think that's why a lot of the book isn't in the movie, because it was just concentrated on Mothman.
I'll be honest with you. I think, look, there is quite a lot in Point Pleasant in West Virginia, right? And I think, see if they made a film of the actual book, it'd have been a hell of a lot better.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It'd be 100 times better.
Yeah, because I think one of the major parts of the book is all the bits about the contactees, because he doesn't call them abductees, does he? He calls them contactees.
Yeah, because back then I don't think they had that mindset of them being abductees and stuff like that.
No.
And to me, it seemed like, see in my head, when you're looking back in the 60s and the type people that contactees or abductees are talking to, they're like a different type of ET, if you call them ETs, right? Or a different type of type of entity, right,
Yeah.
than it is now. So it's almost like there's like a new set of custodians came in and overtook the program for somebody else, because these people, as before, maybe back in the past, you had different style of craft. You had like the classic saucer type craft and all that type of stuff, a lot of orbs and all that, and then it kind of moved. It moved for things like your classic human looking entities or ETs or whatever else to like greys and mantis beings and things like that. You know what I mean? So it's almost like it's like kind of they've been in and left, and somebody else has been in now and doing a part of that job. If it is all happening.
Yeah. But so even though all that's changed, did you notice he didn't mention it a lot, but it kind of stood out to me, was, I'll get it wrong, but you'll know what I mean. So you feel free to correct me about the intergalactic space commissions, basically people that are controlling what's going on between the different galaxies.
In present time.
No, in the book. So back in the 60s.
Yeah.
He was saying about I can't remember the actual name, Intergalactic Federation.
Yeah.
And these different ones that are wanting to do good, and you've got some that are a bit, I suppose, like space pirates that will come down, rob you, and do bad stuff, and then go off again. And they're the good ones, are trying to stop that from happening by making all these rules and regulations. But even though they talk about that now, when I was listening to the one about Stardust Ranch in Rainbow Valley, near Arizona, with Robert Edmond, that was back in like the 90s, early 2000s. He said pretty much the same thing. You've got these different species of aliens, or ETs, or entities, whatever you want to call them, and they're like part of this galactical space force that are protecting. I suppose it's like the UN.
Yeah.
And it's that this is going back 50, 60 years ago, or 40, 50 years ago. Sorry.
See the best.
Same thing happening.
Yeah.
So I just meant it's the same thing happening then. Is what it is now. It's literally the same wording.
Now, interesting you're saying that, because I was thinking of something I'd read recently with it was a Dolores Cannon book. I think this one was maybe the Custodians. If it was the Custodians, it was the one after that, Convoluted Universe or something, right? But one of the books that they give if you don't know what the QHHT is in Dolores Cannon, so it's like it's hypnotic regression that it takes people back past the normal kind of state of regression, back past like a past life, and then sometimes these people were finding out they weren't for here, they were for elsewhere, and then it was almost like sometimes they could tap into this and entities elsewhere who were part of this galactic federation, right? And the best, I mean, it's one of the best descriptions I've seen what's kind of going on, and I'll probably not a good rendition here, but it was explaining about that what you said there, that there's different entities who are part of this galactic federation, and they've all got different programs that they're running, and some of them are for good for us. Some of them, so they're not. Some of them are experimental. Some of them are for good for us, as in like overwatching. Some of them are a bit of both, between for helping us and helping themselves. Some are just solely maybe just try to help themselves. Some are just like it's maybe interest and stuff like that. And then there's other ones who basically ignore all of them, and who have been skipping in and out doing some maybe more kind of malevolent stuff and things like that. You know what I mean? So there's a better description there in the book when you read in the book, but that kind of brings you to that, and you can understand when people are talking about different things that's happened to them. So you might get abductees, for example, and maybe talk about. You there? I just jumped off there.
Sorry,
who maybe talk about certain types of abductions, and then you maybe get other people who have different experiences and stuff.
Yeah.
Or they're maybe getting tested on a different way, or there's things like all that it goes on. So you can maybe understand if there's different programs running at the same time, then you've got that. And it brings me a thing where, and I'll bring this up later on in the book, but Chris Bledsoe, for example, he described like a certain sign that one of these things had shown him, almost like a symbol, and the symbols were supposed to have meant in the book and the QHSD books was like the symbols were like what the program was, and that was like the symbolism for what the program was. So the symbolism, so what do you call it? Chris Bledsoe, in his kind of abduction scenario, had seen a certain symbol and relayed it, and that's when he started getting a lot of more people talking to him, like people from NASA and stuff like that.
So with you saying about symbol, it was in part of the book. He was saying that one of the women, I think it was one of the women, had an interaction with some big proper hench guy who got out one of these black cars, and he'd gone round to interview him. He had a big black cape on, like they said it was like a Russian bear hat, but had a peak at the front. I know which one they mean. It's like a top hat, but with a peak.
Yeah.
And he was asking questions, but it wasn't your normal straight. It was asking, "What do you do? What do you do for a job?" And just nothing to do with these UFO sightings that they've been having. Mm-hmm. And then they seen that he had a badge on with the letter K on it, like gold, looked like a bit like a sheriff's badge. Can't speak. And as soon as the contactees noticed it, he was doing his best to like hide it and cover it up. Yeah. But that apparently that letter K keeps popping up in different witness statements.
It was a K with a small X or something like that, which meant one of the Greek letters or something.
Because they use a lot of the Greek names, don't they, to name themselves, like the Greek gods.
So what that guy did, he turned up at in the book. One of the contactees or somebody had maybe seen some type of nuts and bolts craft or a landing or whatever, right? And we'll go through some of the stories of the book as well. We'll kind of get a bit in that, but I know we're just generalising now. He had turned up saying he was from Lost Ears Society or something like that, and he was trying to find out who was due the area somebody had died. So he was able to ask all these questions. He was asking all these different questions.
He was
asking questions about like things like
inheriting some money.
Inheriting. So ears,
and he was trying to find this certain person's name.
Yeah. So you can see like you might be the inheritance of this. So we need to kind of find out if you're the right. Can't remember the guy's name, but so he gets his name and he's saying right, how many children, where have you worked? So he's getting all this information off him.
Yeah, bit of background information.
Story. But the strange things they've seen about the guy is they say they noticed they had a wire coming for his shoes.
Green wire, wasn't it?
Going up his leg.
I forgot about that.
And he also had kind of sharp features as well, like really, really, really sharp, pointy features and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And long fingers. Quite a lot of them always had like long, spindly fingers.
Yeah. Well, that keeps popping up though, doesn't it? The pointy face. He describes it as thyroid type eyes. Yeah. So when their eyes are popping out their head.
Yeah.
And then he says about the connection between that and like spirits and all these other things that you see. They all have the pointedness on the face, on the features. He said the long, spindly fingers.
Yeah.
But going back to that wire, because he said when he sat down, his trousers were too short for him and they rose right up just below the knee. And he said he had like a green wire and it's coming down and it went into like, there's like a black circle on his leg that went and the wire stopped behind it. But another thing that they kept saying was that these men in black type things, whatever you want to call them, or even these weird people and entities and all that, they was all wearing thick soled shoes.
Yeah, rubber shoes, big thick rubber shoes. Yeah.
So I was thinking about that today, and I thought it's either one or two things. One to do with the electromagnetism.
Yeah.
Yeah, to stop him, obviously.
I was thinking the same, yeah.
Or are they weighted because wherever they're from, the gravity could be a different... I don't know what the word is. could be a different force.
I know what you mean. It's not something to do with for what they
like
where
mean
they're
boots.
or whatever. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, so could it be there was weighted because maybe the gravity on Earth is a lot lighter than what is there, so they're having to use that. Because another thing,
sorry, I was just going to say in smaller steps and they had the big shoes on.
They were looking at the feet while a lot of them were looking at the feet while they were walking, like concentrating.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely mad though. But I mean, you can see there's some bits that goes on. So we'll kind of go through some of the stories. Obviously, the Mothman starts off. So it's going through obviously the film, the book. I mean, the book. So can you talk about the Mothman? He's kind of obviously just talking about the data, talking about like other ufologists and stuff about ignoring some of the data. Also talking about the US government, in regards to this is a generalization about how they try and look at the UFO problem with just like they say they don't look at it the right approach. They get like astronomers to look for UFOs rather than actually maybe somebody who's been investigating it or looking at UFOs or paranormal aspects of things. You know what I mean? So they've not got the right tools to actually look at the job he was trying to say for like the government. So obviously as well, so we had some of the kind of strange characters coming at the end, but at the start of the story, when some of the Mothman sightings kicked off, right? So the first one was one of the first ones was Connie Carpenter. It was a young lady who's seen a roughly 7 foot, grey, bulky man standing, and you basically had, but it wasn't a man. It had like red bulging kind of eyes, and it had wings in its back.
Yeah.
And its wings came out, and the thing that people didn't describe, they never described a face for some reason. Nobody really ever described it.
No one ever seen the face, or did they?
But they said it was kind of hunched and it had like a pair of wings. But what they did say is it wasn't feathery. It wasn't like a feathery creature, and it basically would open its wings, and it would fly without flapping its wings.
Yeah, it
so
just goes straight up.
Straight up with its wings, say about a 10-foot wingspan, and shoot straight up. But this thing shot straight up and then swooped in her car a few times and tried to kind of go for her. And then when she relayed the story to Keel, because Keel obviously got wind of some of the stories that were coming in, and he went there and he started interviewing people and whatever. Because there were also some UFO reports we were getting as well. But when he interviewed her, she had basically clegg conjunctivitis. So it was basically a type of conjunctivitis, which is like a burn in the eyes. And she had that for 2 weeks. And he knew that. And this is kind of an idea of how Keel was. Like back in the day, he was involved in UFOs and stuff. He knew that was a byproduct of maybe like you're looking at UFOs or being involved in some type of sighting or whatever else, because he's seen it before and he knew to record that. And that's the key. This is back in the 60s. You know what I mean? So you're talking now with like folk like Gary Nolan and people are talking about like the health effects of UFOs. He's talking about it back in like 66. You know what I mean? So you noticed that was kind of one of the kind of main sightings with this kind of grey bulky thing. But it went on to as well after that, where it reminds me of the film Jeepers Creepers. Yeah. So where there was a few kind of couples up at the TNT factory bits. This place was an old kind of TNT munitions place, which had been, you can imagine like kind of bulging kind of igloo type
igloos, aren't they?
Igloo kind of concrete silo type places, underground bits of facility, not too deep, but then it had like loads of munitions and that stored in it and stuff for the Second World War. And a place where people would kind of go up and some wildlife would run about it and stuff like that. But like couples now would go up there and try and maybe get it on and stuff. And I think there was a few couples up there in cars, and this thing started. They'd seen it. They'd seen it actually in one of the buildings to start off with, and it shuffled into one of the buildings. And they seen how big it was. This is like 78 feet, and they seen it had wings. They could see it had wings in its back, and then they shot away in the cars. And they seen it again standing. They said it was either the same one or a different one standing on the side of the road. And then it started flying towards their car and swooping at their car and all that kind of stuff. And they were like totally petrified of this thing. And it ended up where they got to the city limits and it stopped following them. And they some of them actually had the same thing with the cloud conjunctivitis in their eyes as well. And there was another thing as well where this thing was fogged. It reminded me like a bit out of that film Jeepers Creepers with the thing chasing the car.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it was like. If you can visualize that, that's what happened to them. They went straight to the sheriff. They went to the sheriff and they told the sheriff and stuff. And he believed them enough because they were lucid. They were basically, you could see they were really, really frightened and scared. And they went back up and they searched the place and they were looking at the place and they could remember like the sheriff's radio started going crazy and making like kind of like a garbled kind of message on the radio.
Static and all that. A lot of static coming through and
like,
mixed up words and.
But in the book, no, sorry, not the book, in the film, there are a few sightings of this thing mixed in with like another few UFO sightings. But over 100 people seen this thing, right? Over the space of a year, over 100, and like the descriptions of it where it was this 78 foot tall grey creature with a 10-foot wingspan, and it wasn't a bird. You know what I mean? They'd either see it in the sky and they see legs on it, or they would see it standing down and then maybe taking off. So there's a lot of different sightings here. And one of the kind of close-up sightings where there's a lady where it seemed to kind of rise up at the back of her car.
Yes.
And she got that much. She was at a house. She got that much of a fright as she had a baby in her hand. She dropped the baby.
Yeah, I can't believe that.
I know. And her husband or boyfriend or something like that kind of grabbed her and the baby,
didn't
and ran into the house, right? They ran into the house away from this thing. And it came up to the window and it was like staring in the window. And I mean, so that's the type of stories was happening. I mean, a lot of the stories, the amount of stuff that happened in this one area, it was totally mad. That with the sightings.
Yeah. But were you saying about the conjunctivitis? A lot of that was from when they were staring at the red eyes.
Yeah.
But then when the UFO waves and all that was coming through, there'd be a flash of light, and then they'd see a being, or it'd be a flash of light, and then they'd see an object, some sort of object, whether it was a UFO or a vehicle or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then either the next day or the day after, they'd have really bad conjunctivitis. I remember there's one woman, when she woke up, this is towards the end of the book, it was that bad she couldn't even open one of her eyes.
Aye, yeah, that's right, yeah.
And then them two guys who had the encounter, they'd look like they'd been sunbathing for about 10 hours solid.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Completely covered.
It reminded me because one of them, I think, was a story in where there was a UFO above somebody's car and they looked out the car and they were sunburned on one side of their face or on their face or something. It reminded me of Richard Dreyfuss and Close Encounters of the Third Kind when he pops his head out the car and this thing flies over the top of him. He's got like half sunburned face.
Yeah.
But see, so all the accounts of the actual creature were seen throughout the area for like, as I'm saying, over 100 people seen this thing, and there wasn't a mass sighting yet. So it was like you're talking maybe 2s, 3s, and 4s, but people were actually seeing this thing.
Yeah,
if not slightly more than that, right? Or 1s. I mean, so it wasn't like 20 people here seen it. 20. It was like, so it was all kind of like smaller encounters, right? So it was quite a lot of people who seen individual accounts here. The one that it chased the car with the couples, they said that there was a large dead dog lying at the side of the road.
Yes.
But when they came back with the police, the dead dog was away.
About
So
10 minutes later or something.
I think this thing had took the dog. So in amongst all that, there was loads and loads of UFO reports. Like there was like a woman had seen a stationary cylindrical UFO in the sky, and she could see a man standing outside it, but he was like standing out in the air.
Yeah, he was levitating, wasn't it?
Levitating out in the air, and then went back into his craft, and the craft whisked off. And that was like some of the accounts. You were getting things like that. You were getting lights in the sky. You were getting all types of craft, landings and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, a couple of the crafts that were witnessed, they've said that they could what looked like diamond-shaped windows, different colours.
Yeah.
Or they'd have like a red light solid in the middle, then one below it rotating anti-clockwise, and a solid one at the bottom. Then as soon as I think there's a plane or something was flying over, as soon as this plane came into sight, the lights went out on this, and as soon as it was clear again, the lights came back on it.
Yeah.
So
there were loads of things like that where it was like interfering with technology. So you would have, as you would get in this day and age as well. So you had like UFO sightings, and it was affecting things like the phone lines, the electricity lines, the CB radios that they had in the cars and stuff like that. And it affected all this type of stuff. But in amongst all that, you also had, you had the sightings of the creature, the sightings of the UFOs that were right across the community throughout a space of a year. And then over and above that, you were getting, so the UFO investigators were coming to town and stuff like that, and reporters and stuff. But you can imagine there was loads of other people at this TNT factory. There was thousands of people out trying to find this thing as well. So they were out trying to look for the creature or the UFOs. So there was an influx of people coming to town. But that brought a lot of strange people as well. So we were getting like men in black coming to people's houses who had sightings, and they were asking them a lot of strange questions. And some of them as well, where it got a bit more kind of strange was where it was almost like some of their phones were getting tapped and stuff like that, or they were getting strange phone calls of people. So people who didn't have had an ex directory number, but they're all still kind of phones and stuff like that, right? But they would have phone calls of people telling them to keep quiet and things like that, or they just have phone calls and people just shouting numbers down the phone and strange metallic voices.
It's like the same two numbers over and over, wasn't it?
Things like that.
It was so you had 12 and 40, and then they'd say some more jumbled up words.
And all that in the mix, and then you had people saying they were for the Air Force and stuff like that, investigating people and investigating, like maybe like asking questions and stuff like that. But they could tell they weren't. And there was like the strange ones was with the actual, we alluded to earlier on about the Men in Black guy who came saying he was from the Lost Heirs Society. So we basically try to, somebody's due inheritance, he was trying to kind of find the right person. So he was asking all these questions. But the strange thing with him is he just was the oddest guy in the world, and he was asking all these questions to get all this information. When he left the house, a black kind of car drove up. He jumped in this car and they drove away with the lights off.
Yeah,
it just like
they never put the lights on. And
the actual got contact saying, "Oh, you're one of the people we're looking for." But there was like loads of strange things like that. And you had this one guy who was called Jack Brown, but he was like the strangest guy ever. He was like, he would ask the strangest of questions, and almost like he was asking more about John Keel and the UFO investigators than he was asking about the UFOs or the sightings or the cryptids or whatever. He was asking more of the type of questions, and sometimes he would say, he would maybe chap a witness's door and say, "Oh, he's maybe friends with John Keel, or he was friends with another ufologist," so he would get past the threshold and get in.
Gray. Can't think of his first name.
Was it no Jack Brown?
No.
Oh, you talking about the other ufologist?
No, the other ufologist. It was John Keel knew. Something Gray. I can't think of his name.
I've got it somewhere. Find it.
I'll let you find it. I'll have a look in the break if not. But they'd say they was friends with him and they're nothing. But just jumping back when you're saying about these people turning up and then just walking off. A lot of people said that because obviously a lot of it is out in the sticks, in West Virginia, so they'd have to cut across a field, and they said it had been heavily raining, there was mud everywhere, and they got to the door, and the weirdest thing about it was that they had these shoes on, like shiny shoes, and there's no mud on them. Even the soles of the shoes were like spotless, like they was brand new. A woman said like they walked in the house and there's no mud, no dirt, nothing. How they didn't get any mud on them was virtually impossible. My guess is they didn't walk. They just
And the same as well. Where one of the ones at the end where they had like a Manny Small statue. It was about 4 feet something, and he came in and had a pair of big rubber shoes on as well. And you see that he was asking questions about the UFOs and stuff like that, and John Keel, and he was getting closer and closer to Kenny Mary Hire, who was the person that worked for the news paper, and she was feeling a bit uncomfortable. And she went through, and Kenny got the other guy who Kenny worked in the newspaper as well. And she got the guy looking at a ballpoint pen, like pure staring at it.
Oh yeah, and
as if he'd never seen one before. She said, "You can have it if you want." And he started cackling, and he ran away.
He's mad.
Ran out of mad laugh
and just ran. Like something out of a horror movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just remember another thing about the shoes was they did see a couple of prints. There weren't many, and there's one of them. It had like the ripple effect on the sole, and it is the supposed Neil Armstrong footprint on the moon. So where you've got the ripple effect, then you've got like outline around it, like a border. It was virtually the same as that. So that's what I was saying before about these fixed old boots. Were they to keep them on the ground because of the gravity is different, or was it for something else? For me, I think it'd be to keep them grounded.
The thing is, the interesting thing about some of these people, like, well, Jack Brown was claiming he was a UFO investigator, but he was a strange guy with really kind of weird features, right pointy face, really spindly fingers. He would ask the strangest questions. He would talk like broken up, as if he was like reading something right slow or trying to remember something or whatever. And as soon as all the reports died down, he disappeared. Never to be seen again. Never to be seen at any other UFO encounters anywhere else, because if he's an investigator, you'd probably come across him some other time if you're an investigator at another kind of time. So he disappeared totally.
Was that him that went into the restaurant and didn't know how to use a knife and fork?
That was a different story, because like John Keel was just relaying some stories, Men in Black and stuff, are just strange people, and it was one that was somewhere else in America, but this guy turned up in a restaurant and he didn't know how to use a knife and fork and stuff.
Yeah, and he gave him a menu and he just went, food. So he goes, "What a steak?" He's like, "Good." And we give him, and then he ate it. It's normal. But just jump it from that, just quickly jumping. I know he's going to be jumping about a bit, but with Indrid Cold, he was explaining. I can't remember who the name of the person it was. He was saying, "We're the same as you. We've got
Woodrow Derenberger."
That was it. Yeah, Woodrow. We eat, sleep, breathe, same as you, but where we're from, it's not as advanced as here now.
Mm-hmm. So we'll go back a wee bit with that. So in amongst all this story as well, so you've got the cryptid sightings of this crazy flying Mothman type thing flying about. You've got all the UFO stories. You've got these weird people in town. This is a place of 6,000 people, remember. That's not a big town.
And, right? And everyone knew everyone pretty much.
And so you've got all these weird people in and out, these wee kind of homesteads, farmsteads, asking questions. People come into their homes. One of the things that I was interested in, I thought it was nuts, but when some people were in asking one of the family's questions after a sighting, either some UFOs or whatever, that Jack Brown, a weird guy, stayed in their house for like 5 hours or something.
Yeah. Oh, she just had a baby, hadn't she?
Aye. Hanging about the house.
Literally a few days old. And he's like, people were coming around to see the baby, and he didn't show any interest. They even acknowledge that this baby had just been born.
Yeah.
There's just some creeps sat in the house.
Some creeps sat in your house for like 5 hours. Bolt. But yeah, so the Dan Berringer story was Indrid Cole and Dan Berringer. So the thing with this, so he's driving his car and he sees this thing at the side of the road, and it's a cylindrical object at the side of the road. And he pulls over. I'm trying to correct if I remember the story wrong or no, but he pulls over and he meets. Does he know? In fact, he doesn't meet him first. He actually sees this thing at the side of the road, cylindrical object.
Yeah.
And then with a man standing in it, it kind of shoots off or something. The man goes back in it and shoots off. And another time where he's driving along the road, and this thing comes up next to his car, and he thinks it's another car, but it's actually like a black kind of UFO type thing.
Yeah.
And it pulls in front of him, and it's this guy Indrid Cold, and he he basically tells him that he's from the planet Lanulos or something like that,
Yeah,
and tells him some stuff. So he's kind of like a contactee type thing. It's quite a fantastical story, but at the same time, there's other ones out there. I mean, so he's basically from that story, he ends up relaying it to John Keel and other people, but he's got more contact with him. So it's almost like telepathy, right? Which links into some of the present day stuff as well. But the telepathy stuff where the guy, the thing says, I'm above you, and he'll come out of his house and this ship will be there. And people had seen this type of thing, right? So you'd say like, he'd get a feeling in his head that would say, right, I'm above your house right now, and he'd go out and he would see like some type of craft or some type of mass light or whatever, and he would have all these type of telepathic things. But he got to the point where he met this guy. It was almost like you had like UFOs landing, dropping off people who were then getting picked up with cars, and they were going to do other stuff within America, right? That's kind of what it was like with these contactees back then. It was like they were like aliens that were living here. That's kind of what it was like. But then obviously they were like intermixed with going different places. But maybe they were abductees, but just didn't know it, and did they know they were missing time and all that kind of stuff back then. But the thing where this guy Indrid Cold, other people had met him. His wife had met him and stuff, like the guy's wife and that. And she didn't want to take much to do it. She actually said they scare her because just with the features and stuff like that. I think they had different type of features, and they said that he wasn't really that keen on them. But the interesting thing I found with that story, right, which links into something I said earlier on, was so during the story, that Woodrow Derenberger, I'm sure that's his name, he invited to go to NASA. He went to NASA and they interviewed him at NASA. So he
went with his missus and his kids, didn't he?
Quick pictures and all that kind of stuff, got badges and all that. And
so they went like proper tour, and then they took him into an interrogation room.
Yeah, and then he got an interrogation and asked them all questions about everything like that. And they said that a certain name of the person at NASA, whatever it else was, and say he had a bit of kind of proof or whatever. But the interesting thing with that story, which I relate to something, the Chris Bledsoe story, more recent story where contactee, abductee had relayed he was in contact with something, and that's when he relayed that symbol, and he was getting contact with, like, Jim Semivan was talking to him. They've got other people talking to him. You then had like people who used to work for NASA talking to him. He got invited to NASA. And he went to NASA and he got to walk around NASA and he had a talk with people at NASA. And here's the NASA that have nothing to do with basically UAP or whatever else. They know nothing. I mean, absolutely fully bull, if you ask me. Like, the guy, I'm talking about NASA.
Oh, yeah. But then you've got later on, you've got the guy who he like house shared with a couple more students. I can't remember what he was studying at university, something to do like quantum physics of some sort. And he had like missing time. He met one of these guys. I can't remember which one it was. And he said like, this is where the missing time bit come into it, because they didn't know anything about it. He got dropped off at midnight from one of the girls that he worked with or something at this restaurant. And then he met up with, can't remember the name of the ET. Oh, that's going to bug me now. Anyway.
Is this in the book?
Yeah, this is in the book. So he meets up with him. It's the second meeting. They go walking through these woods to where this craft is. It's a 30-minute walk. They go in it. He goes into one room, and these two aliens go in another room, and he's looking like a screen or something at the bottom of it. And as it's going on, you can see on the screen that it's moving further and further away from Earth. And he goes, he doesn't know if it's been 10 minutes or 10 hours or whatever. The next thing he sees is another planet, and then he's going down and landing on this planet. And he's there for a few hours, and they do him a tour and that, and walk around and show him all this different stuff, explain things to him. Then they take him back, they land, and it's another half an hour from where the craft is to where they dropped him off outside this building. Mm-hmm. He went in the house. It was 1:30. So he was saying, he goes, I'd only been gone an hour and a half. It was half an hour walk each way to and from this craft, there's an hour straight away.
Yeah.
And I was definitely gone for more than half an hour.
Yeah.
So they must have some sort of time control. Like the way he said it was, he can stretch time or compress it depending on what they need to use it for.
It doesn't exist.
Man-made, isn't it?
That's it. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So other things which I found quite interesting as well, where John Keel was also, he was harassing the Air Force and harassing the Pentagon at the time as well, as they're doing in present day stuff. You know what I mean? So he was always at them trying to find out more, and they were always giving the party line that they weren't really interested in UFOs or whatever else. That was back then. He was actually in their offices dealing with them back in the day, trying to churn away, try to get some stuff out there. But it seems back in the day there probably was something clandestine where you had, obviously, there was probably Men in Black in that area, which weren't the Air Force, were probably something else. But then you would have had people who were maybe Air Force or whatever else, trying to find out. So it seemed like you probably have them back in the day, Air Force, trying to find out what was going on. But they know what was happening, so they would be trying to bug contactees and all that kind of stuff to try and get a grasp on what's happening.
Yeah,
I know that, but I mean, it was quite funny because he was in and out the Pentagon and stuff like that, trying to kind of find out more. But he was on about historical sightings of the kind of Birdman or the Mothman type thing. You know what I mean? So he said it's been seen through history. There was like sightings there in the 1800s and 1900s, not in the same place, but there were sightings out through America, through the world. There's like I think ancient Egypt, ancient Americas. It was used to be called another thing. It was called the Garuda. I mean, type of bird. So it was like, and then the Indians had the Thunderbird and things like that as well. So there was loads of kind of concepts of talking about this thing.
Yeah. Well, they may claim as well, just what you're saying about Egypt, they may claim that they had something to do with the Sphinx and the pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's true or not, but that's what he said, that they claim to have had, whether they built it or they were involved with the building of it.
They said they had quite a lot of kind of different sightings of this thing, and it went back to obviously Egyptian and the pyramids and that as well. The pictures there back there as well, but other kind of sightings there. One of the ones they said in Vietnam, sighting it in Vietnam, where there was guys at like some guard station or whatever else, or manning some foxhole or whatever. They seen this thing flying towards them, and I think it was in the sunset or something like that, and it was a winged creature. They said it was like a winged, black winged lady. They could see like the features set and the breast set and all that kind of stuff. But it was big. It was like big, like a normal kind of size person. I mean, but with big wings, a big wingspan. Yeah. And they seen that in the Vietnam War. And it reminded me, when I read that bit of the book, it reminded me recently with that story of the guy in Scotland who'd seen a winged creature, which was roughly about 2 foot wide or about 1.5 foot wide, which he said it definitely was the bird. They could see.
The one that was.
He could see a body.
His car.
Yes, you see a body to this thing, and you can see his expression on its face and things like that. So, I mean, it's just mad how these things have been seen through the years. You know what I mean, with the amount of witness testimony and stuff and things like that. Some of them used to say the sightings here within the 100 or even more than that. Actually, they would maybe see it and think it was a plane to start off with, and they would continue to look at it and they would notice it wasn't a plane; it was actually like a thing that it was big.
Yeah,
like a big bird.
But you noticed a lot of these sightings, it was a big grey winged creature.
Yeah,
but it said it was like it didn't have a neck. It said just went straight into the shoulders, and they, like you said before, the wings would pop out from behind them, and they'd take off without using the wings to fly.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of your sighting a wee bit.
Which one? The pterodactyl.
You'd seen something, like something like that.
Yeah, and that didn't flap its wings.
Aye.
And I said I watched that from me seeing it till it flew out of sight. And it didn't make, even now thinking about it, doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. It just didn't fly.
What sort of size was that?
I'd say that was about a 16-foot wingspan easily.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say from head to tail, because like I'd say that was about 20 to 24 foot in length.
Mm-hmm.
That is just that. Every time I think about it, just blows my mind.
How high was it?
So I'm just trying to work out with the trees. I'd say trees at the back are about 50 foot. I'd say about 100, 150 foot at the most.
It's mad.
Only because if it had been any higher, I probably wouldn't have seen it. That's the only reason I'd know. Because, like I said, I was stood at the back of the house. I was looking up, and I could the back of the roof, the back of the house, the roof sloped down to the front. It wasn't your typical pointed both sides.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like that. It was more that's the back of the house, and that's the roof going down. So it was about, from where I was stood, measured, it was 2 foot above the house, but it wasn't because of perspective view and all that. So I'd say it was no more than 150 foot high.
It's almost like you get a converging points between the planes, and these things can just pass through and pass back out again, or things like that. I mean, that's kind of what it's like. So you get these things skipping out of different dimensions or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've heard the stories as well as that as like a manta kind of thing. Not a manta. What's it called again? Is that manta ray? See, like one of the kind of things like that in the sky, like type of that. A story with that, which is kind of translucent in the sky.
I was actually listening to something about that last week.
Nuts.
I can't remember where it was. It was on a podcast or something and all that. But if you're saying that, another thing that John Keel was saying, so like back in the 1400s, there's a lot of witch sightings, like flying witches and that.
Yeah.
And back in medieval times, there's a lot of like these thunderbirds.
Yeah. Just cut off. Coming back.
Don't know. And then
just cut off for a minute.
Yeah. MIB. Shh. Yeah, so there's like a lot of witch sightings around the 1400s, and then back in, I don't know when medieval was, but there's like a lot of like these prehistoric bird sightings and that shouldn't be there. And then in the like late 1800s, early 1900s, there's a lot of like zeppelins, like the is that what they're called, zeppelins?
Yeah, like airships and stuff.
Yeah, and they'd have a light on the front.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, and it was a light that was lighter than what we got today, an LED light. It was brighter than that. So, is it, don't know, it's right, circumstantial of what you were seeing in that particular period?
Yeah, that's what he was saying earlier on about the whole kind of thing with the ET concept. He kind of done away with that and kind of think, well, it's kind of like what people believe at that time they see.
Mm-hmm.
But they could just be like sometimes see a light and then form something about it, but didn't actually see the nuts and bolts of it or whatever else. Or this thing manifests to you what you could manifest something
you could make out of it.
I mean? Yeah, because it's like it's interesting when you go back in the day, even with UFO sightings, for example, and you've got your classic kind of saucer type the craft to things like now where you see, I don't know, you get triangles and then you see other stuff, you know what I mean? It's I mean, there's so much different stuff that comes out now, but I mean, it's mad. But when he goes on about all the historical stuff, I mean, there's so much in there. And the thing is as well, we're talking about seeing these different things, right? And seeing either UFOs or seeing these creatures. And he was talking about as well, which people might think is a new concept as well, but like the spectrum of light. He's talking about that back in for the 60s. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, the spectrum of light, we can only see X amount, the spectrum of light. We might be able to see. So he's talking about that back then. A lot of people think that's new stuff, people coming out to do, you know what I mean? It's like, one of the best analogies that I think of that is like you're watching a movie screen and you're watching a movie screen and for what you see is like the movie screen, but you didn't get to see everything else when about outside the movie screen behind you. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's kind of one analogy about it, but it's
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
it's so he's talking about all that type of stuff. Like we didn't see everything that's there, or we can't see everything that's there because of the spectrum of light that we can actually see and visually
So-
see.
Question for you then. So do you think that, I know it could be a number of things, but do you think that then the light frequency that we see, sometime it like, I don't know, I won't say glitches, but the frequency changes a bit, and that's why we can see these other things that I do now believe are around us all the time. It's just that we can't see them.
Yeah.
So we get that little glimpse in that frequency that we're not used to having all the time.
I've got a number of kind of ideas. I mean, none of them are probably right. You know what I mean, but I do think that that these things are there, right? And let's say let's say for example, there's other creatures there or whatever else that they might not be interested in us. You know what I mean, so you've got bees, you've got insects, and you've got ants. And that they go about their day-to-day business.
Yeah.
Might not be totally interested in us at all, right? They'll
But
just go and do what they need to do, right? And then you'll have other levels of intelligence all the way up to certain things who may want to prey on you, right?
Yeah.
And other things who might be well more intelligent. But you might actually, just because you think there's things that you can't see, doesn't mean to say it's got to be more intelligent than you. There could be things out there that may not be more intelligent than you. If you know what I mean. I mean, so you might just have other creatures there. So I reckon there's all that kind of stuff there, but they might not be able to see us. We can't see them.
That's my next question. Do you think that they would be able to see us?
I think maybe there's some things that probably can. I think there's probably some things that can, but then you maybe have at some point where you get the planes or the dimensions, as people call them. I mean, might overlap at certain points, and that's how you get window areas. That's how you get things where more akin. You get the Skinwalker Ranch effect. You get like places where you get flaps and things like that. You know what I mean, so we get UFO flaps, and it only happens because maybe it might be where we are in the solar system at that point that it's certain convert. I don't know. I'm making it up, right? But
no, with you saying that, I was reading something the other day, and they were saying about these solar flares that could play a big part on it.
I mean, it's interesting how you get flaps happen over a certain time. So if you look at an area, my area here, for example, we had a major kind of flap in the 90s, right? And it reminded me a wee bit of that, the book when I was reading it, actually, right? The Bonnie Bridge, Falkirk, all that type of area. I've talked about it before. There was like, within the space of probably 10 years, roughly, there was maybe like 600-700 sightings, right? Quite a lot, right? And that ranged from nuts and bolts to lights to abduction scenarios to things. And there was other things where there was like strange people seen and all that type of stuff going on, right?
Yeah.
And it happened in a small, you're maybe talking, I don't know, you're maybe talking like a 15-20 mile radius, right?
Yeah.
And there was things involved in that where there was like landed craft off the ground, police involved, a lot of different really, really major sightings. So that was between like, say, late 80s to late 90s, a 10-year period. When you were going back as well, back to like the late 70s, there was a number of different sightings in the late 70s.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I wonder if there was any more room about that time, if it comes in cycles and stuff. But there's been stuff sighted up the Bathgate Hills for years. You know what I mean? If you look at it over a yearly period, you'll see nothing. But if you look at it over like a 10-yearly period, you'll see quite a lot.
Yeah.
For a one kind of area. You know what I mean? And it's, I don't know, it's a funny one, like.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that these overlaps last years, not hours or months.
Yeah.
And that's why you get, I mean, that's why you've got all this stuff going on in one area for so long and then nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know. Totally, just guessing, but.
And I mean, I think there was I go back to the Dolores Cannon books. They had a description for that in one of the books, and they were talking about this, and it was about convergence points where overlaps for like it only happens now and again, but not a lot. And they were talking where that's how sometimes people can go missing.
Yes.
Or appearances. Some people can like basically like disappear one place and then maybe turn up elsewhere.
Yeah.
There were stories like that where people would appear. There would be loads of disappearances, but there were stories of appearances where people would appear certain places where they would turn up and not know who they were. And they just appeared there. They just came for somewhere, still wearing strange clothes, disappeared for maybe somewhere else, but had a bit of memory loss. Or they actually disappeared from one point and then would turn up hundreds of miles away.
Just quickly, I know we're going off the book a minute, but there's that guy that turned up at the airport. The guy from begins with T. Someone will know.
Mr. T.
No, he's from a country beginning with T, and he turned up at an airport. He had a passport and had all the same sort of passport as what we have.
Yeah.
And it had all these different stamps in it from these countries that don't exist. And he was showing them on a map where it was, and I think it was around near Turkey somewhere. But it was called I've got the word Turan in my head. Turid, Turid.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Joe's just bought. And they was checking it out, and they put him in a room while they went and sorted something out. These they got passport control, like customs.
Border police.
Yeah. And they came back to the room and he'd gone. There's no sign of him, his luggage had gone, everything.
It's nuts.
And so that was what you were saying. He just appeared at the airport and he was flying back to Turin. I think it's Turin or Turin. Sure, it's Turin. And then all of a sudden he's not there. I think that was either the 20s or the 50s. Tourist, Turis.
That's why are supposed to get like strange creatures appearing.
Yeah.
So you maybe get like a convergence point where it's like a convergence point and it forms a portal or something like that where they can come through and go back, or they just come through and don't know they're through and then eventually go back.
Yeah, but then what happens to those that come through and can't get back?
Don't know. Maybe they're still here. Maybe that's why you've got like cryptids and shit like that running about.
Probably. Or they've come through and thought, "Oh, I like it here. I'm going to stay.
I'm going to eat that bloke today."
Yeah, there's a lot more food. Natural selection and all that.
Other thing he talks about as well is with all these different sightings and stuff as well. He's talking about the smell of the fire and brimstone. You know what I mean? So he talks about like the sulfur smell. So when you see a cryptid, when you see a UFO, or it's like in close proximity, a UAP or UFO, or whatever it is, a nuts and bolts craft, there's always a sulfur smell. So going back to what we're talking about in regards to the convergence points or people coming through for somewhere, is that smell from the craft or the thing, or is it actually from the place they've been?
Or could it be a smell from them traveling through into our dimension?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
That's
the thing. Is it like a smell from the place they've came from, and it's like a bit of air running about it? I mean, it's or something.
Yeah, well, yeah, it could be because like maybe the atmosphere or the air or whatever you call it, where they live is different. So you've got that pungent smell, and then they constantly smell like that. It's like when you go into someone's house, each house has its own smell. Do you know? I'm not saying it's not rotten, but it's like when
I know that. Fine, I used to have cats.
But then if I went to my mum's house, I'd know the smell of my mum's house.
Yeah.
Or go to my brother's, I know that smell. And I think each house has its own smell. So could it be something like that?
But they all kind of smell the same, though. I mean, it's like you're always that sulfur smell when it's involved with like a UFO kind of land on a site and they get the sulfur smell. A cryptid sighting sometimes follows a sulfur smell. A demonic thing in a house, sometimes you get a sulfur smell. Sometimes you get it with ghost encounters, and sometimes you get it with poltergeist things. You know what I mean? So all these different times, it's called, like back in the day, it's called fire and brimstone. Now it's just called a sulfur or rotten egg smell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But all of that thing, that's one thing that always puzzled me. Is it a byproduct of the craft or the thing, or is it a byproduct of the place it came from? I mean, I think
it's where they've come from.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Must be.
That's what I'd go with. Because if all these different types of creatures and entities have all got that same smell, it's got to be something to do with that.
Yeah,
Not
totally.
not necessarily the person or object.
It was John Keel that coined the name ultra-terrestrial as well. So rather than calling them extraterrestrial, he coined the phrase ultra-terrestrial for the fact that it was like more an entity, something, you know what I mean, or it's or intelligence or whatever.
That was one of my favourite parts of the book, because when he was saying about the ultra-terrestrial, it's like that just made a lot of sense. Even though we talk about it pretty much every week, obviously you don't remember every single conversation you have, do you? And when he was saying that, like I said before, what I've learned over the last few years, and then going back reading a book from the 90s, which has got events from the 60s in it.
Yeah.
The book, even if it was written now, it'd make as much sense now as it did then, if not more.
I find all John Keel's books like that.
Give me a new way of thinking. Like, sorry, just going back with the ultra-terrestrials, that they're not always, just because they look like they're a solid form doesn't mean to say they are.
Yeah.
So that's why they can come and go and use these human suits or whatever you want to call them.
But that's the interesting thing with all that is like there's been talk of all that and ultra-terrestrials and stuff. Some people think it's a new thing, but it's been there for a while. But when he talks about all these things, like back in the day, I mean, it's mad because you can pick up any John Keel's book and you can relate it to it. Actually, see, one of the last ones I read, I mean, you would, because they're talking about obviously the then either Blue Book or Condon inquiry or whatever, right? So all the different things that the government are doing and how people think about it and what they're trying to do, you could pick it up and read it and think it was a now.
Oh yeah,
you know I mean?
Definitely.
Totally.
Yeah.
You would, and it's like, there's no much difference to it. I mean, so any books are like that, and they're well right thought through. Going kind of on, another thing I found interesting as well, where West Virginia, he said all the parts of America were inhabited with Indians.
Yes.
Apart from West Virginia, they didn't.
And even the natives wouldn't live there.
Yeah.
And didn't they find some like stone runes with like these symbols on it and that?
I think it's found some type of like stone structure or like sand and stone structures and stuff like that. But none of the Indians stayed there. I mean, they avoided that.
Yeah, everyone avoided
that whole place. Yeah.
And I think at one point there's only like 300 people living there.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it first started getting going. But just quickly going back to the ultra-terrestrials, the reason he was saying that is because extraterrestrial means from another planet, which means that they're a physical form. So that's why he used the term ultra-terrestrial, because it can be from a different time and dimension and not necessarily be solid form. Sorry, I just remembered that.
No, did you watch, off a bit of tangent, but did you watch Hellier?
No.
You need to watch Hellier.
No.
Because Hellier's got quite a lot of references to John Keel, Indrid Cole, and ultra-terrestrials and stuff like that. I mean, you would actually love Hellier. I mean, you really would. You'd love it.
Is it a movie?
Is it new? No,
is it a movie?
No, it's a series.
Oh, right. I'll put it on my list.
It's like a paranormal series, but it's more like I'm not really into paranormal series. I don't watch a lot of kind of paranormal shows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I watch the odd one now and again. I mean, but you find that funny if I run a paranormal podcast. But I tend to watch loads of kind of UFO stuff, and I read a lot of stuff or listen to a lot of audiobooks. But I mean, in this, it's kind of like an investigation that starts in a place called Hellier, and it's to do with somebody having a story about devil worshipping and stuff like that. But it ends up going into like links into a story about the kind of these kind of aliens that were seen in this cave and all that kind of stuff, and it goes into loads of different tangents. And it's like kind of like the phenomenon is leading them down this story, and it's through doing stuff like the Estes method, with doing like ghost boxes and stuff like that and things like
Yeah.
that. Quite a lot of stuff like that in it. And it's got a lot of different links into Indrid Cold and ultra terrestrials and what's his name again? There's another book written, Son of the Euthonauts. What's the name of the book? Can't remember it. It'll come back to me. But anyway, watch it. You'll like it. You even just watch the first watch the first 2 episodes, and then if you didn't like it, then watch the rest of it. It's all on for like 45 minutes, but it's quite good.
Yeah, we're looking for something new to watch anyway. We
It's,
have just sorry, I was just going to say we have just started watching Under the Dome, Stephen King.
What's that? I've seen that.
Under the Dome.
Yeah, what is it?
I've read the book. It's Stephen King, and there's a dome that just appears over this town, and it's all twisted, and no one knows where it's come from. It's like just like an invisible shield.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but it is pretty good. So I don't want to ruin it for anyone.
Well, that's all right. I'll watch it. So that was the whole Indian thing. I found that quite interesting.
Yeah.
More people through it seeing the Mothman again. There was also a farmer had seen he actually seen the eyes. He seen like the red eyes of the Mothman, just next to a forest bit where he stayed, and his dog ran off to chase it, and he got a fright, and he kind of like went back in his house kind of thing, and he came out in the morning trying to look for the dog, couldn't find the dog, but he seen the dog's footprints running in the circles in the mud.
Yeah, like it was chasing itself.
These footprints didn't go anywhere else after that.
Yeah, they just stopped.
Like, running in circles, then stopped, but they couldn't find the dog. The dog never came back. Bandit the dog. That was the name of the dog. You know what I mean? So, so I totally interesting. Trying to think what else. Another thing when they were going through it, which was, I think a wee bit was in the film, when they were at the power plant area, they went to the power plant and they were trying to, or next to the TNT power plant area, disused bit, they were showing Keel to start off with where think this had been seen. He went in.
Oh yeah, he went and then he went back on his own, didn't he?
Yeah, but he went in first. He went in, and then when he was in, one of the women who'd seen it before, but had chased her car.
Yeah.
Her name is Mrs. Mallet or something like that. She's seen it. She said she'd seen it in the corner. There, she could see its eyes, and then she got a fright, and they all heard outside some like metal clanging, some noise, metal clang. He couldn't hear it. He was inside the building, and a few of them were at the edge of the building. He couldn't hear that noise at all. And then they noticed that there was blood coming out his woman's ear.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
As well. So he went back himself, and he noticed that when he was at a certain point himself, he got an intense fear. Right? So he got the fear factor and he got the Oz factor type thing, right? So, and he knew once he got past a certain point, it'd be fine again. So he kept going back, and he could actually discern the edge of this area where he would go into, and he would have this intense fear for some reason.
Yeah.
It's almost like it was like emitting some fear at a certain area. And he could work out where the area was. It wasn't a big area. He said, as soon as I walked up to this bit, I had this intense fear. I came back out it was away. And I went back the next day, and he said it was away. The feeling was there. You know what I mean? I've had that feeling once before.
Yeah.
And it's mad. And I didn't go back and forward. Never felt it again at that area. But I felt it when I was younger at a certain place. And I had the same feeling later on at a certain place, which then turned out to be a place I interviewed a guy. And it was
right.
And so I had a feeling just out running. I think I've told the story before, but just to quickly go over it if nobody's heard it before in the chat. But I was out running, and I had a strange feeling of this place in the forest. And it was like I didn't want to go any further in the forest because intense fear. I was out running, wasn't looking for nothing paranormal, just out running. And during the day though, it was during the day, felt weird though, totally weird. So I didn't go into the deep bit of forest, and I came back for it, went home, told my wife, and then 20 years later, interviewed a guy who'd seen some type of cryptid in the Bathgate Hills, which was in 88. He's seen that with his family, right?
Yeah.
This weird silvery type creature ran really fast. And it was about, when I went to interview him, it was about 50 metres or 100 metres for the spot. I'd had that feeling, which I found quite mad. You know what I mean? So And I never ever knew nothing about John Keel or anything at the time. In regards to back in the day, I just put it down to a weird. I'll just say it was a weird feeling. You know what I mean? Aye, so odd.
So what's your overall thought of the book or the movie?
I thought the movie was quite good. I mean, the movie was all right. It's watchable, but I reckon it never done the book justice.
No, I think the movie was good because it concentrated on Point Pleasant.
Yeah.
I did like it for that reason. But obviously with a book, it's just account after account after account. But he gets to a point where he's talking with all these contactees and they know stuff that he's literally seconds ago was just arranged. He'd arranged to meet someone over, I think it's in New York or California. It was one of the coasts.
Gray Barker.
Gray Barker, that's his name.
That's his name.
Yes. So he'd arranged to meet up with him, and then he phoned one of the women who's a contactee. She went, "Oh yeah, I know about your meeting up with Gray." He goes, "I've literally just got off the phone to him, like less than 45 seconds ago. I spoke to you straight after. How do you know? Oh, such a buddy told me a couple of weeks ago. I did." And he goes, "I didn't even know until now that this was going to be set up. How could somebody have known weeks ago?" But he reckons that it's something to do with all these ETs, that they're all mind speak with each other and putting the thoughts in their heads, and that's how all this stuff is happening. It's kind of like pre-planned.
So the interesting thing with that is as well is where when to do with the contactees, they were relaying, he was meeting with some of them and they were relaying some stories for entities or people who were allegedly entities or whatever. And they were relaying stories to him. Some of them checked out, as in like, this is going to happen on this day. And it happened. Can't remember the story. But it also, there was other stuff that said, well, the Pope John Paul's going to be killed in this day. And it didn't happen or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of different kind of things like that.
But with that one, apparently there was an attempt to kill him. But
right.
The guy, because I listened to that bit today. So there was an attempt to kill him. I think it was in Turkey or somewhere in the Far East. And the bodyguards managed to infiltrate him. There's some guy in a big black cloak come out with a dagger.
Yeah.
Ready for stabbing him. And they jumped him and stopped it from happening.
So they said that was going to happen, and there was like a few other things that did happen.
But
and
they got the wrong dates, though, didn't they?
Yeah. But the thing is, as well, so when they were relaying some things, so there was things like going looking at other contactee stories. There was things that not to do with Keel, but there was other ones where looking at them in the past where there was contactee or abductee stories where they would turn in back in the day and say, right, there's going to be a landing on this day, and it's going to be here and whatever else, and it would happen, right? And it was kind of, and then it kind of got to the Keel in the end these days where he kind of got fed up here because he was kind of like, we're almost getting toyed with. He kind of got a bit pissed off with them. I mean, no the contactees, but the phenomena, it was like they're just kind of toying with us because it's like they're saying, we're here, this is happening, and this is going to happen then, and it didn't happen. And at the end of the book, where they say one of the ones they said was going to be a blackout on like the 15th at Christmas when they're turning the Christmas lights or something. In New York, and then they did it, and then there wasn't a blackout. But when the president was going to do it, they did it. It wasn't a blackout, but on the same news, there was a thing about the Silver Bridge collapsing.
Yeah, because that's what he was saying. He was saying that there's a lot. They were doing a lot of distractions. So where there's a big UFO sightings going on for like days, everyone's going over there to report it because obviously back then it was just pen and paper, wasn't it? And the old style camera. So everyone's going over there looking at that, and then all these cattle and animals and that are being taken or mutilated or whatever.
Yeah, that's the thing. So during the time as well, forgot to mention that there was cattle mutilations. So there was cattle mutilations as well. People had actually seen who was mutilating the cattle. They said there was like two guys in white coveralls,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then somebody came out with a gun and chased them, and they actually said they ran and they jumped over this big fence, like as in like just
like
went
a
over it.
jump, a standing jump, wasn't it? Like
Yeah,
5
yeah.
foot fence and just completely
And they said
cleared
the
it.
funny thing was that while we were white overalls could be easily seen at night and stuff like that. But they said Keel was saying as well back in the day, this is 66, remember, and he's saying that the cattle had lackey blood anywhere on the incisions and all that kind of stuff, lackey blood running about the animal. The in some cases like the brains were missing, or
the
there was like
brains,
internal organs were missing. So all the prime cuts that we'd want to take for an animal weren't removed. It was
they were
mainly
left leaving
brains.
all that, weren't they?
Aye. So he was relaying like the cattle mutilations that were happening there. Other things where there was landings in fields and stuff like that, and people coming out the craft, like human-like people coming out the craft and talking to people and things like that. Loads of strange stuff. But what I did think about the contactee thing as well, which related to like this day and age, is where you've got abductees this day and age or contactees this day and age, like Chris Bledsoe, where he had information saying there was going to be an earthquake or something like that. I think that did happen.
Yeah.
There was also other things where, but at the same time, some of the contactees back in the day were wrong, or they said the related stories it didn't happen, and then they basically were a laughing stock or whatever. So you've got people these days like John Ramirez, right, the ex-CIA guy, who's on quite a lot of podcasts, and he's come out and he's relayed a lot of stuff in regards to his experiences. He's an experiencer, and he's also said things like there's going to be some type of event in 2027, right? He keeps relaying to that, and there's a few other people related to that as well. 2027. He says, he even said in one type of thing, he knows in an official capacity there's something in 2027. And he's then recently come out and said there's got to be some potentially disclosure-wise, which is going to be maybe no for a government at the end of this year, if not 2024. So and then you've got like the Anjalia, and what's her name again? The other lady who's came out as a contactee and saying about they're going to meet aliens in this cave and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So she came out recently, and she used to work for the military in America and stuff like that as well. She's come out and she's saying stuff, and people are poo-pooing her. But now John Ramirez is siding with her and saying that I wouldn't no take what she's saying serious and stuff like that, because like she is. So he's kind of actually siding with her now and saying stuff like that, and you think to myself, are they now the contactees of the past, and maybe they are getting stuff related to them in some capacity for other intelligences, but is it going to come to fruition? Is it not going to come to fruition? Because you think of these things where in recent podcasts where you hear things like John Ramirez saying, right, there's going to be an event in 2027. Chris Bledsoe has also said there's going to be an event in 2027.
Yeah.
Right? And what is this event? Is it a climatic event? Is it going to be a cataclysmic event? I mean, it's going to basically cause some, or is it going to be some type of disclosure event? Or is it not going to happen at all because they've been fed crap information? You know what I mean? So I've been a tangent there. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's all right. We'll find out in about 4 years. It better be worth the wait. It better be something good. But
so there's all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? But it's a mad one, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I'm just trying to remember what else he was saying.
So one thing I did pick up on as well it was relayed in the film. So there was a thing in the phone calls that people got, right? The phone calls that people got, sometimes they get woken up during the night, and this was like some people contactees, or it was maybe people had seen UFOs and stuff, or some people within like West Virginia had seen stuff, and then they get phone calls during the night or during the day, and they pick up the phone, it was somebody saying wake up 452 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then they'd like, and it would just be saying the same thing over and over again, right? And that would happen to a few different people, and they relayed that in the film. And it turned out one of the police officers was basically in the water, and they pulled her out of the water, and her badge number was like 452, whatever the number was, and they were saying wake up 452. So that bit was relayed in the film. But one of the interesting things, going back to the phone calls and stuff, so this is all going on, this flaps going on. You've got MIBs out there, you've got cattle mutilations going on, You've got the whole works over the space of a year. People are flocking to the area to go and see these sightings. They know what times the UFOs are going to appear. That's what how prevalent it was getting. They were turning up and saying like 8:30, you see them coming
on a
over
Wednesday,
that hill or whatever, and they were happening. But all that stuff was going on, and
so you just said about the times then, because they did a check. They did it like Monday to Sunday in like 3-4 different parts of the world. They worked how many sightings were seen in that area and what the percentage was.
Yeah,
and it worked out. The main time was Wednesday. Was it 8:30 or 10 o'clock at night?
I think it's a Wednesday between 10 and 3 in the morning.
That was it. Yeah, 10 and 3.
Yeah.
So there were others other times and days, but the main one was between 10 and 3 on a Wednesday.
So if you're going to do a Star Watch, folks, or a Sky Watch, do it on a Wednesday night.
Tonight. Do it after we finished on air. But yeah, it's like they worked out the percentage, and it was something like it started off at like 12% and was something in like 26%, and then the overall was like 99.9% average.
You see that through some other Keel's books where he's looking at the data, and he's looking at things like that. I mean, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, but another thing as well, I just had a quick look in the book. He was saying that when he got certain messages from these beings, he knew that they'd been talking to different contactees, because he'd have he'd say something specific to each contactee, and then if it came back to him from these ETs, he knew which one they'd been talking to.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the little things like that. That was his way of knowing what was going on and keeping track of everything.
So you also had people getting threatened and stuff as well. So people were getting like threats put through their door saying like, "Did he talk about what you've seen?" Keel's phones were tapped.
Yeah.
So his phones were tapped. His stuff, his house used to get raided all the time. Stuff would go missing. But his phones were tapped. They actually found stuff on his phones and all that. And he actually contacted the company and they said, "I think your phone's tapped."
Yeah.
And they said, "Well, who's been tapping it? So we don't know who it is." But it's like, we know because they're dropping voltage in your line. That means like, usually it's somebody's tapping your phone. So
because
like, who's watching him? But obviously it's probably the government. And that they're going to try to find out what's going on or try to kind of get in on it.
Because he asked a woman from the phone company, he got her to repeat it, recorded it, and he asked the first one to put it in writing, and she refused. But the second time, when they came out to the junction box, and it clearly been seen that someone had cut through the cable to his house. He lived in an apartment block. It's a complex. I think there's like 200-300 people living in this building.
Mm-hmm.
And the engineer said, for them to find your line, it would be someone who would have to work for a telecommunications company.
Yeah.
And it pretty much take them all day to find out which one was yours. It's not just, you can't go in and snip one, and if you do, it's like million to one chance.
Wires.
Million to one chance of it happening. And he managed to get that one in writing.
Yeah.
But then he was saying, like, when he was doing interviews and that, because he said, like, it got to the point where he was flying around America, or they was coming to him to do all these different interviews. Every time, or when he was doing an interview over the phone, every recording he couldn't use, because when the contactee was talking, there's all static over on top of them, and all they could hear was him asking the questions, and it's just static and white noise and all that over the top of him, so they couldn't use any of it.
You're saying that now as your voice is starting to go garbled, because it's like it's starting to break up a bit.
Is it? I was going to say his mind started doing it. He was saying, like, he goes, "There's so much time and money wasted."
Yeah, all that kind of
everything.
So you had that stuff going on, and you had phony UFO investigators going about the place as well, asking questions. You had people kidding on, they were trying to give people inheritance, asking questions. You had somebody going round all the people at Keel had been going to before, like maybe witnesses and stuff like that. Keel was quite clever at what he did, because when he recorded witness testimony, he didn't just outwardly put it out there. He'd keep his stuff for like a year or so before he'd even put like some things out, because it means that he didn't want copycats telling stuff, and he didn't want people maybe copying what he'd done, or copying actually the sightings and say, "Oh, I've seen that, it was this." So he would kind of hold information to make sure he would get the right information of people, or even simple things as well. When he was interviewing family members, he'd split them up, and he would interview them separately and stuff like that. But you had all that going on. Fake UFO investigators. You even had somebody going round to his contacts saying it was his secretary, and he was going round, and this lady was going round taking information, saying, "Oh, I'm John Keel's secretary," because she'd said that she'd get in the door. And but the funny thing is, he says she went to like some of the doors that I'd never relayed any information about, and I'd kept quite private, and she knew where and went.
And he'd not shared any of it. And they knew who he'd been to. But do you remember the one where he'd gone to this farm? It's like this farm that was miles away from anywhere, and he's going down there, and the guy pops out. He's got a shotgun pointing at him. He goes, "Get away from here." My mate said to watch out for the bloke who's going to turn up with a beard. He's a bit crazy. And then he goes back a couple of days later with that woman. He sits in the car, then they come back laughing. And he said he got a phone call from his mate to say that this guy's going to come round asking you questions. He rang his mate, and he'd been out in the field, and he had to get his missus to get him to phone him back. Goes, "Not made any phone calls to you."
Yeah.
So someone had phoned this farmer guy, pretending to be this other guy's mate.
Yeah, so then he trust this weirdo that's going to come to your door. And then so
he didn't even know that he was going to this farm. He just picked a random farm that night.
Yeah. And so that happened with that. So that happened with that. And also things that happened, he turned up, when he was re-interviewing or doing stuff, he'd go back to the houses, and the phones would constantly ring. The phone would never ring all week. And then he would turn up at this house, and the phone would just ring solid when he was there.
And he'd pick it up.
Pick up, it would beep or something like that, nobody there, or it would be beeping or whatever.
Or as soon as he left.
And then go to another house, and the same would happen again. He'd go to another house, same would happen again. Totally nuts. Totally nuts. It was like something was toying with him. But it's actually, when you look at all the activity was there, you're pretty jealous. I mean, you'd probably like to be amongst that. They actually see some of it and go and interview some people.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? There's that much activity going on. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable.
There's so much to remember from the book. I'm just going to have a quick look on one of the pages now.
One thing he did say about the cattle mutilation, he said, what are they actually doing, and why are they mutilating the cattle? Are they doing it as some transmogrification, is that word, for to actually transform into something? Are they using the blood or something like that? Or are they creating a spectacle somewhere, as you said, so they can do this clandestinely to use the blood for something? You know what I mean? Because there's never any blood in these animals, and they're all taking certain parts of the animals.
It's like specific organs, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there's another thing. Sorry, I was just going to say, there's one of the women, like ETs, had met up with somebody else. There's just too many names to remember, so sorry about this.
No,
and they said about, do you have any AU? And this one's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And obviously the element code for gold is AU, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it was. And it goes back to thousands of years ago, where the things were put on Earth to mine all this gold. So is it back to going for the gold again?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what they're searching for? Is that why they keep coming? See, that's what that had me thinking.
Interesting, though. I mean, it's like the thing with going back to the books of Dolores Cannon, that's a lot of it goes back to pre-civilization before us, and mining and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And got a lot of mad stuff going on. You know what I mean? But I mean, there's loads in it. I mean, it's a massive book, and even though we've talked right through quite a lot of it, it's still worth getting and reading.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Or listening to it. It's like 9.5 hours long.
Tell me about it. I had to have a break from listening to it.
Yeah, I had a few breaks.
It sounds bad, but it's good though, because I get to do it in work because of my job.
Yeah.
So I just put it on the phone through the van and just listen to it.
Well, I go early in the morning with the dog, and I listen to like podcasts or books and stuff like that, and I do it at night as well. And as I was saying to you, I usually, if I'm never doing stuff like this, I'll listen to it and I'll take notes with the phone, my dictaphone. But you're walking by people, Weirdo with the UFO. What the?
Yeah. Oh, just reminded me. That was another thing. They was at an army base or something, John Keel, and he'd met up with all these top ranking officers and that, and his radio went off. I can't remember what was said on the radio, but he goes, the most weird thing about it was, well, there's two. The firstly, you wouldn't get anything coming through from another base.
Yeah.
They're all on their own channels and stations. Secondly, his radio wasn't even turned on.
Mm-hmm.
And you needed a key to switch it on because obviously
and it came on.
military.
Right.
Yeah. So it wasn't just one like what you get off Amazon for like 20 quid. It was a
proper radio.
Yeah. So it is a key start radio, or whatever you call it. So he said he was getting this information coming through on that, which was impossible to happen.
But I mean, that's the thing though, with all that stuff going on, and that was when he decided that they're no dealing with ETs, because it was like with that case, he's seen it was not just the Mothman, but the Mothman was like there. You had poltergeists, you had landings, you had these strange visitors in the area, you had strange lights in the sky, you had orbs, you had spheres, strange craft. I mean, like there was one lady had seen like a massive sphere with like legs.
Oh yeah,
and a propeller underneath it. I mean, things, and it shot up and disappeared. And then the next day, she seen a man standing in the same area with like some type of meter thing, and just loads of weird stuff. Loads of weird stuff.
Do you think that could be like some sort of screen mask?
Probably. I mean, that like some kind of screen memory, because you get going back into other Keel's books. When you look at Keel's books, and he goes back talking about some of what we talked about earlier on with the airships and stuff. It's almost like a phenomena trying to pull us along in technology. It's like, so before there was airships, people seen airships in the sky, and a guy came down with a rope and with an anchor and with some kind of like sailor suit on, and attached it to a church or something like that, and then they had to kind of get it off and then climb back up the rope and away. There was stories like that before airships even existed. There was stories like in the First or Second World War of these planes that would just constantly be hovering about in the clouds. And like planes couldn't do that for the fact that, and they could hear the noise in them and stuff, but planes couldn't do that for that amount of time. And there was like, there was always like these stories where it was like some technology just a wee bit away from us.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that he said. The clothing that these things were wearing, it was either out of date or hadn't come in. The fashion hadn't started yet. It was never
like old fashioned or fashion that hadn't started yet.
Yeah.
Aye.
So, and the way you're saying that about the aircraft, he said that there's a group of 4 people that was on a hill, and they watched this object with lights. It went behind a cloud, and then waiting for it to come out, and then it was a normal plane that would come out the other side. But it took about 10 seconds for this plane to come out, and surely they would have seen it before it had gone behind the cloud.
Yeah.
But then this UFO type object didn't come out the other side. So a UFO went in and a plane come out. It's like really good magic trick, isn't it?
Yeah, that's like a screen memory as well. It's kind of like these kind of things, like, because that's the thing as well, where you had like you get helicopter sightings. You get helicopter sightings, and people, it's almost like sometimes black helicopter sightings are one of 2 things. They're like one attached to the military, but another time it's like people see like a UFO, then it's like a helicopter or things like that, or it's like a screen memory type thing.
Well, I think the one I had, I'm not going to go on about it because everyone's sick of it, but the one I had was a screen memory, because I know for a fact, the more I think about it, the more stuff I remember. It didn't make any noise, and it was flying in between my house where I lived.
Was this a creature, or was it a?
No, it was not long after I had my first UFO encounter, and then it was just there doing all this maneuvering between the house. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go on Google Maps. I'm going to get a picture of the the street where I grew up, and a picture of the back garden,
Mhm.
and then you say there's a explain like with the helicopter doing all these maneuvers, and you'll clearly see that it's not possible without crashing into one of the houses.
Yeah.
So it's just weirdest thing I think that's ever happened to me.
One of the things that I'd mentioned, I hadn't spoke about this, right? And it was like I know we're going off a tangent, but it was same type of thing. And I actually went back and asked one of the guys recently about it, and he remembered what it was, and I remembered it as well. And
Yeah,
we were at school, right? We were at school. We were in we must have been like, I reckon I was like primary 5 or primary 6, which would have probably put me about 10, 9, 10, something like that.
yeah.
Probably about 9. And so I stayed next to the school, not too far away from it, in a high part of my town. And I could always remember we seen this like old World War II plane, right?
Right.
And it was extremely low. I mean, extremely low, to the point where it just missed. You can imagine the school was here, right?
Yeah.
You had a main road, which was just like a kind of normal kind of B road type thing, and then you had a row of houses, right? And we were at the top of a kind of plateau, right? Top of this like hill, right in the town. It was called, where I stayed, it was called Mount Pleasant, but it was like, it was called Academy Street, right? So that's where I stayed, Mount Pleasant, that's what it was called, right? So, so kind of to do with the book, right?
Yeah.
So this aircraft, right, which was an old type World War II plane, right?
Yeah.
And it literally, you could see the pilot and all that, right?
Yeah.
It was that low, and it just missed the roof of the house, right?
Oh.
And the house is a 2-story. This one was a 2-story older type house. It was a wee bit higher, so it wasn't like, it was maybe just a slightly higher than your kind of average kind of council house kind of thing. I mean, so it was 2-story, maybe a wee bit higher than that type of roof it was, and it just missed that roof. Literally just missed it.
Right.
I think just missed it. And I always I could always remember wanting to go see if it crashed or not, right? And over for that, there was my street where I stayed, and past my street was it was all mossland and like moorland and mossland and like trees and heather and stuff like that, right? And I kind of thought, like, I can't remember if I went and seen it or not. Yeah. And it was like, I could remind you the story, but I never told anybody that. I mean, I just kind of thought it was a strange kind of old plane that I seen, and that was it. Yeah. But I asked him, I said, it was recently, I seen him on Facebook, and I contacted him. I said, can you remember that? And he's like, aye. He goes, I was telling my daughter about it.
Yeah.
The other day, it was funny. I said, well, what happened? I goes, can you remember going to look for it? He said, I can remember us going to look for it, but I don't know what happened after that. But I can imagine if we went to look for that thing, we're in school at that point, so I can imagine we'd have got in trouble with whatever else if we went away to school to look for this thing. But I can't remember anything.
Missing time, Chris.
I was telling somebody else's story more recent, and they were saying there was sightings of like ghost planes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because in that vicinity, further up, there was some World War II German bombers crashed and stuff like that, and things like that, right, and died during the war, tried to bomb the docks in Leith, and then crashed in the Pentland Hills. And some people in a place just about 5, 6, 7 miles away had seen the same, had seen like some type of World War II plane. And I could remember what it looked like. And I could remember roughly, and I looked into what had crashed and stuff like that. And I kind of thought, it does look like that. And I don't know if it was screen memory to own them, but I'm like, I'm sure it looked like that. I'm sure that's a plane I've seen. And although I was like 10 at the time, and I sent the picture to him, I was like, I think it's this. And he's like, aye, that's it. Yeah. Just mad. But I can't remember if I went and looked for it or no, or whatever else. I can't remember nothing else after that, which is annoying.
Yeah, you could have missing time, you know.
I know.
Could be an abductee or anything.
No wonder I'm crap at maths.
You spent all your maths lessons on a different planet.
That's it. Aye, just like, I mean, looking for a crashed World War II plane.
Yeah. Do you reckon we should do part 2 of this?
Maybe no for this book. I think we're done with this book.
Because we could do some on the movie, or
we could do another book.
Can we do a movie? It's easier.
Like we'll do a movie. That's what we'll do. Do a movie.
Yeah. Oh, well, we've got Skinwalker season 4.
Aye, that's coming on. Aye, that's right. Aye.
Yeah. So we
It's
could do that because we're going to be doing this. We said every 6 weeks, didn't we?
Yeah,
On the Wednesday.
totally. Well, I'll tell you what. I've got a couple of books here, but they're not as big as that. I've got one that's 5.5 hours.
Well, that'll do. I can do that in a day.
Aye, that's not a bad one. So I'll ping you a few messages for that.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah, but I think with the Mothman, I think the title is a bit misleading.
Yeah.
Because it's not Mothman Prophecies until the very last bit of the last chapter.
Yeah.
And that I
There's
don't
no
know.
many
I think
there's no many prophecies in it, and you've got the Mothman, but I think it should be called an overwhelming phenomena kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's like
because to be honest with you, I was listening to it, and today I ended up phoning Joe, and I said I don't even think I'm listening to the right book. I don't a lot of the stuff in it I don't remember reading before.
Yeah.
So I think I had about 40 minutes left when I got in. So I stuck my earbuds in, got the book, and when I got to the next chapter, I thought, right, open the book on that chapter, and yeah, it was right. It just didn't seem the right one. I thought, I've not spent 9 hours listening to the wrong book. If I have it, I don't know what I'm going to do. Just going to have to wing it. But yeah, the title is very misleading, I think. Like I said, the film is better titled that because they concentrate on Point Pleasant.
Yeah.
So that does make a big difference to it. But I've read other stuff about Point Pleasant as well, and there's a lot more with the Mothman sightings. There's an old bridge on an old train line or something. You got the little wooden bridges going over the rivers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Mothman sightings around that area. And then there's only a little, like I'm talking 20 foot in length. And then that bridge collapsed and all this other stuff went on. But none of that is mentioned in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know.
It's
a good book. It is a good book.
We could date on Hellier.
Yes. Give me a chance to watch it.
Watch it. Date a bit on Hellier. You'll like it. I mean, you will like it. I might watch it again. It's not too bad. Just noticed like that. So other things as well. Where I kind of picked up on things like electrical faults, cars breaking down, cars stopping, cameras not working. All that kind of stuff was happening back in the 60s as well as happening now. Still happening now. Obviously, the Wednesday phenomenon, which we talked about.
Yeah, there's one other thing. They were saying about these flying objects, because they said there was more like flying cars and spacecraft.
Yeah.
And he said they were flying just above the tree line. And how any of them didn't crash into anything was beyond them.
Yeah.
Because they were flying so low and so close to everything. It just nothing made any sense. That's pretty much the gist of the book is none of it made any sense.
No, totally.
It was just random stuff thrown together.
Other things as well. Mentioned about his tap phone. You know what I mean? So he hanged that.
Didn't he find like a matchstick?
That was in somebody else's phone. Because he looked to see if somebody else's phone had been tapped and he pulled it apart.
And he undid it.
He found like a matchstick in it with some graphite.
Granite painting on one side.
It was actually like some type of cigarette explosion thing in a joke shop.
Yeah, because he said he did like he'd buy magician tricks and all that. He used to do a bit of all that kind of stuff. And he said he's seen a packet of them and like it's what you put in a cigarette.
Yeah.
So when you light it, it blows up.
Yeah. But why would he doesn't know how it was inside a phone?
Yeah. And no one, even when he spoke to the engineers, he asked them about it when we have no idea how that would ever have got in there.
Yeah. That was one of the phones that he thought was tapped with one of the other witnesses.
Yeah.
But that was the thing. There was a good thing in there with ufologists like getting harassed and stuff. Or some things, it was like one of them I spoke to who was just basically had turned around and say, I'm out it, I'm not doing it anymore. I'm just, I'll give you all my stuff. I'm sick of it. You know what I mean? And that's sometimes, I mean, it's easy to get like that in this sometimes because it's, I mean, the rabbit hole's big enough. You can't go down it, you didn't come back out, and it's, I mean, there's so much to it. You know
I think the only way to get out the rabbit hole, like you just said, is to stop doing everything.
Aye, stop reading, stop looking at stuff. But then you're looking at things like these days where you think to yourself, right, you can come out it and stop doing it and stop looking at stuff and stop reading stuff. But then you think to yourself, well, you look in these, you've got guys like Gary Nolan, who's a neuroscientist and Harvard professor or whatever. I mean, works at Stanford or whatever, right? And you think to yourself, he's coming out and saying stuff like the way he's talking, it's like he knows stuff, right? He's saying 100% they exist, right? He's saying that. He's also saying stuff where he relays stuff and he talks about things where about what if we're farmed, what if we're this, what if we're that.
Yeah.
And I mean, and he's talking about things where the idea's been put out with things like Robert Monroe and stuff like that as well, with things that he learned, the astral traveling, about why we're here and all that. And I mean, it's like, it's just mad that they come out with stuff like that. You got Luisa Elizondo talking about stuff about us dating back to like 70,000 years ago and stuff like that, and things like that, and like pulling things like that out of the bag. And I'm like, where he's getting this from?
They've got to be getting it from somewhere. It's not just guesswork, is it?
Yes, no. I mean, the thing with the 70,000 years thing, I mean, he said that, he talked about civilization, manipulation starting for something like 70,000 years ago. He said it in one of the podcasts. It was like one of the kind of off the cuff comments. It was about DNA.
Yeah.
It was about DNA and about basically maybe information encoded in DNA and going back 70,000 years. And 70,000 years is a hanging number, a good number, for the fact that going back to that date, there was a bottleneck, evolution, but mainly about us evolving. There was like a lot of catastrophes and that and stuff like that. And then civilization was end up at a bottleneck, and that's kind of where it kicked in again. It's something to do with 70,000 years. And I don't know how they can get that. They've gone back that date. I mean, we can only find relics back to about like 7,000 years, let alone like going back that far. So I don't know how they can pull things out of the bag. But all these people like Luisa Elizondo, you've got people like Gary Nolan. They're like the working groups that were set up years ago, I think. And they know they're talking about this stuff and they know
definitely.
You know what I mean? And they're relay wee bits and bobs. I'm kind of get fed up eating them again, listening to them, because it's like they relay so much, and it's like you never get anything though.
No,
you never get anything. It's always like, well, can that like wee tidbits, but then it's like breadcrumbs. You know what I mean? But the breadcrumbs, like he's a loaf. You know what I mean?
Here's a bakery.
Yeah, aye.
Do what you want.
The Greg's. And you also get this like John Ramirez and stuff, and he talks a lot of sense, and he talks about experiencers and well-spoken guy and well-knowledgeable guy, and knows a lot about the radar information and all that kind of stuff. And he alludes to like some type of events that are going to kick in 4 years' time or something. I mean, like, what do you know? I mean,
yep. Right. Well, we're at the 2-hour mark, Chris. Suppose if anyone's got any questions, you can put it in the comments on YouTube and we can answer them that way. But I think the best suggestion was read the book or listen to the book.
So at the end there, the bridge collapse.
Yeah.
The bridge collapses at the end. 46 people dead. But there was related to some type of disaster that was going to happen within West Virginia. They actually thought it was going to be the chemical plant, but ended up it was the bridge.
Yeah.
So
we've not spoiled it because there's tons and tons of stuff we've not even covered.
9.5 hours of stuff, and it's really, really good. We've been into UFOs and stuff. I mean, it's like you would literally, like the first time I listened to it in a really, really short space of time.
Yeah.
Because there's that much in it, and it's quite good.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Right. Well, thank you again for coming on, Chris.
Well, thanks for having us.
Pleasure as always. So we'll do the next one 6 weeks today. Is that all right?
Yeah, cool.
It will be.
I'll send you a few ideas.
Calendar.
I'll send you a few ideas.
Yeah. So that will be. Sorry. 12th of July.
Cool.
On the same day of the Battle of Boyne.
12th of July. All right. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Right.
No,
so that's that. So yeah, we'll do Helia. Yeah.
Cool. Yep.
I've got 6 weeks to watch it and remember it.
Yeah. You'll like it. It's good. It's good.
Yeah. No,
I'll give me a chance to watch it again. It's quite good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the guy's name. I'm not talking about the guy who's in it. Can't remember his name. It's the Newkirks that are in it. If you know them at all, the Newkirks.
No. I'll probably know them when I see them.
Yeah.
But I'm crap with names.
Can't remember the guy's
faces.
name.
That's it. Right.
Yeah,
sorry, go on.
You'll like it because it's full of like synchronicities and stuff like that. It's all about magic, the phenomena, and weird stuff. You know what I mean? It's pretty good. Like, I mean, that's why I started watching the Penny Royale and stuff. I've kind of seen it. It was in fact something I watched the but it's good.
Yeah,
good.
Cool. Right, just before I go, on Friday I've got Glenn Richardson coming on from NEPS and Bufon, BUFON. So he's going to be talking about them too. That's at the normal time of 8 o'clock. Before we do go, Chris, is there anything you want to add?
No, really not. I'm fine. Thanks tonight. Thanks for having me again.
No, pleasure. I enjoy doing these.
Good. I mean, so if you fancy listening to the Scottish Paranormal podcast, give a listen.
Yeah.
I mean, so you find me on YouTube, Facebook, on a podcast.
Joe's been putting all your links up anyway, so
cool.
People go on the chat, it'll all be on there. But yeah, no, thank you again. I'm going to end it now because, like I said, we've gone over the 2 hours and I need to download everything and send you the links.
Cool.
Send you a copy of it so you can upload on your podcast as well.
Yeah.
So thanks again. Thanks everyone on YouTube for watching. Thank you everyone on both podcasts that are going to be listening. I will see you on Friday. Chris, well, you'll hear Chris when you listen to his podcast, and you'll see him again in 6 weeks. So have a great rest of the day, evening, night, whatever it is you're going to be doing. And I will see you in a couple of days. Take care and goodbye.
Take care, folks.